Parshas Miketz. This week's Parsha opens with a rendering of Pharaoh's confusion after he's dreamt a distressing dream. We're going to focus on one verse and the problems that it presents, but here's the setup. Pharaoh this is 2 years after the last episode where Yosef had interpreted successfully the dreams of the baker and the butler. And now Pharaoh wakes up, Pharaoh dreams, and he wakes up and he's troubled. And he dreams again, and he's troubled. And the first dream is 7 cows, very healthy, fat cows, emerge from the Nile, and then 7 very emaciated cows, sickly cows, come up and they consume the healthy cows. In the second dream, you have 7 sheaves of wheat that come up, and they're very healthy, and then 7 sick ones come and consume them. And this is very distressing to Pharaoh. Rav Schwab asks why. We'll get to that in a little while. But let's look at the verse. It's in Perek Mem Aleph Pasuk Ches. That's 41:8. Reads as follows. Vahi baboker. This is after Pharaoh wakes up. It's the morning. Vatipoem rucho. We're going to read the ArtScroll translation, then we're going to talk about this. First of all, what's the word meaning of vatipoem? So ArtScroll says it means his spirit was agitated. Vayishlach, and he sent out Vayikra es kol chatumei mitzrayim es kol chachameha, and he summoned all of the wise men, the necromancers and the wise men, all of his advisors, all of the advisors of Egypt and his wise men. Vaysaper Paro lahem es chalomo, and he told them his dream, singular. Vein poser osam, and there's none who could interpret them leFaro, to Pharaoh. So this verse presents a number of challenges. First of all, what is vatipoem rucho that we mentioned earlier? Secondly, there's an inconsistency between the singular form of chalom. Pharaoh says, as it's rendered here, vaysaper lahem es chalomo, he tells them his dream, singular. And the Torah observes the ein poser osam. There's no one to explain them. But it doesn't end there. It says le Paro. So first of all, we have this inconsistency. And secondly, why le Paro? There's nobody to explain them. They didn't give a satisfactory resolution. So first of all, vatipoem. What does vatipoem mean? So pa'am means a time. It implies some kind of rhythm or beat. And Rashi says it's like a pa'amon, like a bell that goes clang, clang, clang. So, and some say that it was referring to his heartbeat. In other words, he was just, he was freaked out, and he couldn't figure out what was going on. The Ralbag actually says pa'amon, pa'am meaning a time here, a time there, a time here, a time there. His mind is racing to contemplate, what does this dream mean? What does it mean? Now, let's get to the chalomo, the inconsistency between chalomo and poser osam. He had a dream. He dreamt twice. Is it one dream or is it 2? Pharaoh strongly felt it was one dream. And his advisors kept treating it as 2 separate dreams with 2 separate messages. They suggested, says Rashi, that the dream meant that Pharaoh was going to have 7 daughters and they would all die. There are some in the Midrash who say that the sheaves of wheat means that he's going to conquer 7 areas and then they would rebel. And there was no unified explanation of this. Now, Rabbeinu Bachaya says this is pretty intriguing. You get all the wise men in his world, all of them, from all of Egypt. And you say, what does this mean? There's nobody who could come up with the interpretation that Yosef came up with. Is it so rachok? I mean, you're talking about cows that are used to plow, and the result is sheaves of grain. What's so difficult? Okay, maybe the details, but they didn't get close. So Rabbeinu Bachaya says, quoting a verse in Yeshayahu, Kadosh Baruch Hu's Meshiv Chachomim Achor V'datam Yisakel. It is within the Almighty's power, and in fact he does from time to time take what appear to be smart people, and he casts them aside and he frustrates the way they think. We see that a lot nowadays. So it could have been that others could have interpreted this dream accurately, but according to Rabbeinu Bachaya, he prevented them. There are some who say that Pharaoh actually dreamt the dream and its interpretation in one dream, but he only remembered the dream. He didn't remember the interpretation. That's the difference between recall and recognition. The two types they say about memory is one is to recall it. The other is not to be able to recall it, but when you hear it, you say, that's it. Some say that's pshat, that's the understanding of the Maayan Chazal, the observation of the sages that while a child is in its mother's womb, it learns all of the Torah, and then he's caused to forget it before he exits. And some say that's how, when you recognize the truth of Torah, when you recognize Torah that's true, that you get a sense of satisfaction of recognition, that you can recall what it was that you learned. Okay, so there's also a Midrash that says that Yosef, obviously he spoke last, but that is something that a wise person should do. He shouldn't shoot off his mouth. When a question is first presented, he should listen to what other people say. Pharaoh had the opportunity to listen to everyone, and none of the Chartumim could pressure Yosef into giving his interpretation first, because Yosef wasn't there. They might have said, says one of the commentaries, they might have said, when Yosef uttered his interpretation, they might have said, yeah, that's what I was going to say. But they couldn't, because Yosef wasn't there to interrogate, to ask, what do you think? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu set it up, obviously, in a way that Pharaoh's frustration would be relieved only through Yosef, who spoke last. The lesson from that being, sometimes it's a good idea to hold off on expressing your opinion until you have an opportunity to hear everybody else. Okay. Rav Schwab asked, as we alluded to earlier, what's the fuss? You dreamt a dream. Okay, you talked to a few people. What is it that caused Pharaoh to freak out? Vatipoim rucho, banging around like a bell. What's going on? So Rav Schwab says that Pharaoh's worldview was being challenged. Let's go back. We asked the question, Ein poser osam leFaro. They couldn't explain it to Pharaoh. They came up with explanations, lots of explanations. We hear all kinds of crazy explanations for all kinds of matters these days. But there was none that was leParo. Some say it means that he heard the interpretations, but he wasn't satisfied with any of them. There are others who say, I believe this is the Ramban, who says leParo, meaning to the king, to the emperor, to the Pharaoh. In other words, this wasn't a dream relating to him personally, and that's why he was not satisfied with any interpretation that included some personal consequence to him, like he's going to have 7 daughters who are going to die. To him, it was evident that this was something about his position as the leader of this powerful country. He was getting a message. He had to do something about it. How did he know that? Rav Schwab suggests that Pharaoh's entire Weltanschauung, his entire approach towards life, is that the strong will prevail. And it was not consistent. It was almost inconceivable to him that there should be somebody weak who would be successful in prevailing over the strong. And so he needed an interpretation. The obvious interpretation would be something other than the weak will win. It didn't make sense, which, by the way, parenthetically, Rav Schwab says that's the reason Miketz this year. It doesn't work out that way. But in most years, Shabbos Chanukah is, on Shabbos Chanukah, we read Parshas Miketz because Chanukah is about Rabim Biad Ma'atim, about the many in the hands of the few. And this is something that ran contrary to Pharaoh's entire worldview. And that's why the obvious manifestation of the opposite of that it caused him tremendous stress. So that's why he gathered everybody together. And they split their interpretations. 1 dream, 2 dreams, as we said. He told them his 1 dream. They explained it as 2 until Yosef comes along. And the very first words out of his mouth when he's explaining is, Vayomer, this is verse 25, Vayomer Yosef al Paro Chalom Paro Echadhu. Paro's dream is 1. There's a single unified explanation to what's going on. He already had Paro's interest. Pharaoh didn't necessarily know that what he was going to say was accurate, but at least there was no dross in his interpretation from the beginning. And that's why they say that even though the second part, according to the Chartumim, the second part related to some kind of political military event, but since the first interpretation, first of all, they viewed it as two dreams, and secondly, they viewed it personal. He tossed it. He tossed everybody until Yosef came around. And Yosef said, it's one dream. Here's the problem. There's going to be years of plenty. There's going to be years of famine, and Pharaoh can do something about it. Pharaoh can lead this nation, and he can prevent, you're getting this message, and you can prevent the tragic consequences of the message by doing something about it. The weak over the strong, the few over the many. Halavai, we should see victory very soon, speedily in our days. Have a good Shabbos.